This table is for actual grandchildren, not cheaters' kids, my mother-in-law told my 9-year-old at her 60th birthday. They told her to sit on a plastic chair next to the trash can. They didn't expect my husband to get up and say this in front of everyone. I swear the air inside that banquet hall froze. It was supposed to be a celebration. My mother-in-law's heavily advertised, overly decorated, painfully self-important 60th birthday gala. She'd invited enough people to qualify as a small political rally. The catering alone looked like it cost more than our monthly mortgage. There were long tables draped in gold cloth, assigned seating cards, 3 separate kids' tables, and more floral centerpieces than scents. And somewhere in that chaos was our daughter, Willow, bouncing with excitement because she genuinely thought this was the day her grandparents might treat her like she belonged. For 9 years, she'd been trying. For 9 years, they'd been themselves. My husband Kelvin and I were still taking off coats when I saw my in-laws, Patricia and Victor, hovering over the grandchildren's table like they were selecting produce. Willow had already run ahead. She adored her cousins, so I assumed Patricia was telling her to scoot in or make room. Then I watched Patricia bend down and whisper in Willow's ear. Willow froze. Froze. Not the polite I'm listening stillness, the kind that belongs in nature documentaries right before a predator pounces. Patricia took her by the elbow and led her away. My heart dropped. And then I saw it. The chair. Not a real chair like everyone else got. A flimsy, sad little plastic thing dragged over from whatever storage purgatory it came from. Patricia set it down next to the literal trash can at the corner of a table that wasn't even meant for kids. She gestured for Willow to sit. Willow obeyed like she'd forgotten how her legs worked. Kelvin squinted. What the hell is happening? I don't know, I said, but I'm about 2 seconds away from flipping a centerpiece. We walked over. Willow startled when she saw us, quickly wiping her face like she hadn't just been gutted emotionally. Sweetheart, I said softly, crouching next to her. Why are you sitting here? Her mouth trembled. At 9, she understood exactly what was happening. Every bit of it. Too much of it. Grandma said... She swallowed hard. She said I can't sit with the other kids. Kelvin knelt next to me. Why? Willow blinked rapidly, like she was trying to keep the words inside but couldn't. She said that seat is for actual grandchildren. Another breath, shaky. Not cheaters' kids. Something inside me cracked so loud I swear I heard it. Kelvin went still, not angry, not shocked, past both. He reached out, took Willow's hand gently and said, I'll handle this. Kelvin, I started, but he was already standing, already walking toward Patricia and Victor, Willow by his side. I stayed a few steps back, close enough to hear, far enough not to overshadow him. My pulse hammered in my ears. Patricia gave him a fake surprised smile. Oh, there you are. Enjoying the party? Kelvin didn't smile. Did you tell Willow she's not a real grandchild? The smile cracked. Victor blinked fast, palms out. Now hold on. I asked a yes or no question, Kelvin said. Patricia clutched her pearls. Of course she owned pearls, and said, Willow must have misunderstood. She has such an imagination. You know how children are. She's not lying, Kelvin said. Patricia scoffed. I would never say something like that. You whispered it, Kelvin said quietly, right into her ear so no one else would hear. She froze, then recovered. It was a joke, Kelvin. You're overreacting. She took it the wrong way. Kelvin stared at her. Thanks for the clarity. He turned, took Willow's hand again, and walked toward me. We're leaving, he said. What happened? I whispered as he reached me. Everything, he said. And that was enough. We headed toward the coat room, weaving past relatives already halfway into their 3rd glass of champagne. Patricia's voice sliced through the music like a siren. "Kelvin, you're leaving your mother's birthday early?" Every head turned. Kelvin stopped. Slowly, deliberately. He turned around, his face calm in a way I'd never seen before. The kind of calm that makes people afraid. "You want them to hear this?" he asked. Patricia didn't answer, but her face said everything. "Yes, I want you shamed. I want them on my side." Kelvin raised his voice just enough. "You told my daughter she's not a real grandchild. You dragged her to sit next to a trash can. And you think the problem is that we're leaving?" A hush rolled over the room. Patricia's face drained, then flushed, then froze in place. Kelvin's voice stayed steady, controlled. "You just lost a son," he said. "I hope it was worth it." You could have heard a hairpin drop. Kelvin's younger sister Megan froze mid-bite, her fork slipping from her hand. His older brother Brian stared like he'd just witnessed an eclipse. Willow's cousins Logan and Maddie, who had been grinning seconds earlier, looked at her with big, round, worried eyes. Kelvin turned back to me. "Let's go." And we walked out. Past the tables, past the stairs, past Patricia's burning silence, and into the cold night air. As the door shut behind us, I thought, this is only the beginning. The worst hasn't even hit yet. People always assume the chaos started at Patricia's 60th birthday. I wish. That night was just the match. The gasoline had been pouring for years. If you want to understand how we got there, how my 9-year-old ended up crying on a plastic chair next to a trash can at a family event, you need to know what came before. Starting with how I met Kelvin. Spoiler, not the way Patricia likes to describe it. He rescued her from the streets of theater, as if I'd been juggling for spare change. Here's the truth. Kelvin walked into my beginner acting class like a man preparing for his own funeral. Nervous, sweaty, holding his script like it was a bomb that needed defusing. He'd signed up because he was painfully shy. The kind of shy where ordering coffee felt like public speaking. Meanwhile, I was a working stage actress teaching classes on the side because theater is spiritually fulfilling but financially comparable to seasonal fruit picking. He was my student for 6 weeks. Every exercise terrified him. Every monologue looked like it might finish him off. But he kept showing up. And he watched me like I was sunlight. Not in the creepy way, but in the I can breathe a little easier when you're talking way. We fell together fast. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't chaotic. It was right. Too bad the rest of his family thought it was a federal offense. See, Kelvin is a middle child. Translation, invisible unless someone needed a scapegoat. Brian, the oldest, got praised for everything. Megan, the youngest, got coddled for everything. Kelvin? He got criticized for existing incorrectly. So when he brought me home, me, an actress, Patricia acted like he'd announced he was joining a cult. "Oh," she said when Kelvin introduced me, "you're one of those." I laughed because I thought she meant theater people. She didn't. Patricia had a very specific definition of those. Women who pretend for a living. Women who kiss strange men as part of the job. Women who can't be trusted because acting means lying. And she brought all of this up before I'd finished my first cup of tea. Victor tried to warn her with a look, but she ignored him. Patricia is a woman who believes in speaking her truth, even when her truth is 98% nonsense and 2% malicious hobby. Kelvin, bless him, tried to defend me. "She's a professional actress, Mom. It's art." Patricia blinked, slow and judgmental. "Art," she repeated. "Is that what they call it now?" Victor coughed into his hand. A tiny apology he never had the spine to say out loud. And that was day one. When Kelvin got his first real job in coding, things got worse. He started earning a proper salary, which meant Patricia felt entitled to a slice of it, and because Kelvin is Kelvin, he gave it. At first, he helped with little things. Then the little things turned into monthly help with bills. Patricia didn't even pretend not to expect it. Victor didn't pretend to object. They ignored him most of the time, but somehow always noticed when he transferred money. Meanwhile, Patricia never missed a chance to imply I was cheating. "Oh, you're in another play? Who's the man this time?" "Oh, you're rehearsing late? With him?" "Oh, she has male colleagues, Kelvin. You should keep an eye on that." I kept waiting for Kelvin to explode. He didn't. He absorbed it like a sponge. That's what middle children do, apparently. Then Willow was born. As her little features started settling in, it was unmistakable. She looked like me. Same eyes, same tiny dimple waiting to appear. She was perfect. Patricia hated it. "Oh," she said, peering at the baby like she was holding a counterfeit handbag. "She doesn't look like Kelvin at all." "She looks like me," I said. Patricia's lip tightened. "Well," she said, "sometimes nature is mysterious." Victor shifted uncomfortably, as if he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. That was the beginning. After that, the comments sharpened. "I'm just saying, she looks nothing like our side. Traits come from somewhere, you know. Actresses live very free lifestyles." Kelvin told her to stop, in a gentle, apologetic way that made me want to scream. But Patricia simply smiled like she knew more than we did. When Willow turned 7, she started showing interest in acting. My heart burst with pride. Patricia's heart burst with judgment. "Oh no," she said to Kelvin, right in front of Willow. "You can't let her do that. Acting is not for good girls." Willow shrank. Kelvin went pale. I saw red. We took Willow to auditions anyway. She loved it, and Patricia loved her even less. Her whispers got quieter and meaner. Those little comments Willow couldn't always repeat, but always felt. "She says weird things," Willow told me once, twisting her hands. "But it's always when no one else is around." That was when I started to fear it wasn't just me Patricia hated. It was anything that looked like me. And Willow? Willow is a mirror. Kelvin and I tried to ignore it. We tried to keep peace. We tried to believe it would get better. It never did. Every year, Patricia's tolerance shrank and her boldness grew. Whispers got louder. Insults got sharper. Excuses got thinner. And Willow? She tried so hard to be their granddaughter. She drew pictures, made cards, told jokes, made conversation. But nothing she did made her real to Patricia. Not until Patricia called her a cheater's kid at that birthday party, and Kelvin finally shattered. Looking back now, I should have seen the explosion coming. You can only poke a quiet man so many times before he burns down the room. And by the time Patricia whispered those words into Willow's ear, the match had been lit, and none of us had any idea how big the fire was about to get. When people talk about driving home in silence, they usually mean something soft and emotional, like after a funeral or a sad movie. Our silence? More like a bomb that hadn't detonated yet. Kelvin gripped the steering wheel so tightly I thought it might crack. Willow stared out the window, small shoulders shaking every now and then. And me? I sat there feeling like I'd swallowed a lit match. When we pulled into the driveway, nobody moved right away. Kelvin finally shut off the engine and said, voice low, "I'm done." Done what? Smiling politely? Ignoring red flags? Auditioning for most patient man alive? But he didn't elaborate. He just got out of the car like a man heading into battle. Inside, Willow went straight to the couch and curled up, tugging a blanket over herself like she wanted the world to disappear. She had been so excited. She had even practiced a little greeting for her cousins in the car on the way there, 9 years old, trying to make herself likable to people who didn't deserve her. I knelt next to her. "You're safe now," I whispered. She nodded, but she wasn't convinced. When you're 9 and your grandmother tells you you're not her real grandchild, it does something to you. It shakes the floor under your feet. Kelvin stood in the hallway for a full minute before he moved. When he did, it was with this strange calmness I didn't recognize. Then he walked to his desk, sat down, woke his computer, and started typing like he was filing termination paperwork for Satan himself. "Kelvin?" I asked. Nothing. I walked around behind him, and my blood pressure skyrocketed. He was canceling things. The monthly transfer to Patricia and Victor's bills? Gone. The temporary contribution he'd been making for 6 years? Deleted. The emergency fund loans he used to send without question? Unsubscribed. Click. 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 Every click was a confession. I should have done this years ago. "Are you sure?" I whispered. He didn't look up. "She called my daughter a cheater's kid and made her sit next to a trash can," he said. "I'm very sure." "Fair enough." "I just can't believe you said that. In front of everyone," I said softly. "Which part?" he asked. "The truth? Or the part where I stopped pretending they're decent people?" I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. He kept clicking. After a few minutes, Willow approached us, rubbing her eyes. "Am I still going to see Logan and Maddie?" she asked quietly. She didn't ask about Patricia or Victor, not once. I lifted her chin so she could see my eyes. "Of course," I said. "Just because your grandparents don't treat you right doesn't mean you lose your cousins. You didn't do anything wrong." She nodded, relief sagging her shoulders. "And Christmas?" she asked. "They're always there." Kelvin looked over his shoulder. "Not this year." Willow blinked. "Why?" He leaned toward her. "Because Christmas is supposed to be happy," he said. "And they don't get to hurt you again." She studied him for a moment, then stepped forward and hugged him around the waist. He froze. Kelvin always freezes. Then hugged her back. And for the first time since we walked out of that party, I saw something other than fury on his face. Resolve. The kind that doesn't break. An hour later, I sat at the kitchen table drafting Christmas invitations. We hosted every year. It was tradition. Patricia loved to brag about it like she organized everything herself, even though she never lifted a finger. This year, that tradition was getting rewritten. I invited my side of the family, Brian and Megan's families, all the cousins, anyone who actually gave a damn about Willow. Patricia and Victor? Not invited. At the bottom of the invitation I wrote, "If you're uncomfortable coming without Patricia and Victor present, we understand. You don't need to attend. But the celebration is happening." I hit send. For a moment, nothing happened. The house felt still, like the universe was holding its breath, waiting to see who would scream first. It didn't take long. Patricia was many things, but slow wasn't one of them. If there was a tremor in the family ecosystem, she detected it faster than Wi-Fi. Kelvin's phone buzzed. He didn't even check the screen. "Patricia," he muttered. He answered and put it on speaker. "Kelvin," she snapped. "Why am I hearing from Megan that Daphne is sending out Christmas invitations? And why—" Her voice sharpened. "Did we not receive one?" Kelvin leaned his hip against the counter. "Because you're not invited." A stunned inhale. Then the explosion. "What is wrong with you? Christmas is a family event. You don't just uninvite your parents." "Actually," Kelvin said, "I do." Victor's voice cut in, indignant and wounded. "Son, don't be dramatic. You walked out of your mother's birthday tonight like a child." "Because of what you did to Willow," Kelvin said. Patricia made a disgusted sound. Oh, please. You embarrassed us in front of everyone for no reason. You stormed out just to make a scene. Ah, there it was. The real crime wasn't cruelty. It was bad optics. Kelvin didn't raise his voice. He let the silence do the work. You're more upset about how you looked tonight, he finally said, than about the fact that I told you I don't see myself as your son anymore. Patricia scoffed. Oh, you didn't mean that. You said it to show off. You wanted attention. You always get theatrical when you're angry. Kelvin blinked once, slowly. I meant every word. No, you didn't, she insisted. You were upset. You'll calm down. We can forget this ever happened. Kelvin stared at the ceiling like he was praying for strength. You didn't even apologize to Willow. What for? Patricia demanded. She misunderstood. You can't punish us for her confusion. Kelvin's jaw tightened. She sat next to a trash can because of you. That's not what this is about, Patricia snapped. You humiliated me at my 60th birthday in front of all my friends. And that, Kelvin said, is exactly the problem. Victor snapped. You don't talk to your parents like this. You don't treat my daughter the way you did, Kelvin countered. A tense beat. Then Patricia delivered the line she always saved for when she was losing control. You'll regret this, Kelvin. Don't come crawling back. Kelvin didn't even blink. We won't be crawling anywhere. You're not serious about Christmas. She tried again. Everyone expects us there. You're not coming, Kelvin repeated. We'll see, Patricia said. The kind of threat that sounds polite but carries knives. Then she hung up. Kelvin set the phone down, slowly, carefully, like it was a grenade missing its pin. He didn't look at me when he said, They're not finished. A chill crawled up my spine. I knew he was right. Patricia wasn't panicking because she'd hurt Willow. She was panicking because her perfect little kingdom, her image, her status, her place at the head of every family event, was slipping away. People like her didn't go quietly. They went loudly. They retaliated. They rewrote their own history and then tried to force everyone else to believe it. The storm wasn't coming. It had already started, and it was about to hit us harder than anything that had happened so far. I should have known Patricia wouldn't wait long. People like her don't sleep on revenge. They marinate in it. But I didn't expect Willow to be the one who discovered it. We were in the living room the next morning, Kelvin making coffee like it had personally wronged him, me trying to figure out how to talk to a 9-year-old about betrayal without using sentences that included the phrase, sets people on fire. And Willow was curled up with her tablet. Her little face, still puffy from last night's crying, was inches from the screen. I heard her gasp first, a small, sharp sound that cracked my heart clean in two. Mom? She whispered. Mom? Look. She turned the tablet toward me. It was the family group chat, and right at the top was a massive paragraph from Patricia, written in that dramatic, self-righteous tone she used whenever she pretended to be a victim. But what froze my breath was Willow's name. Patricia had written, I don't know why Willow is saying we excluded her. She must have misunderstood or is acting things out again. She's a sweet girl, but she can be dramatic, like her mother. We never said anything so horrible. These lies are tearing the family apart. Willow's lips trembled. I took the tablet gently, but she clung to it. No, she said. I want to read it. She scrolled. She made up a story, and now Daphne and Kelvin believe her. It breaks our hearts. We would never say she isn't family. She's pretending. She's acting. She's just like Daphne, emotional and not always truthful. The room spun. Willow, I whispered. You don't have to. They think I lied, she said, barely audible. Grandma. She's telling everyone I lied. Tears pooled in her eyes. The silent, shaking kind that don't fall right away, the ones that hurt the most. "They're adults," she said, voice cracking. "Why would adults say that? Why would they say I lied?" Because they're cowards, I thought. Because they'd rather burn a child than admit they whispered poison into her ear. Kelvin knelt in front of her. "Willow," he said gently. "Look at me." She looked. A wet, wounded stare that nearly destroyed him. "You told the truth," he said. "And I believe you. Your mom believes you. Anyone who actually knows you believes you." "But they're saying I made it up," she whispered. "They're telling everyone." Her voice broke. I pulled her into my arms. Kelvin wrapped around both of us. And right there, in that crushing little family knot, I felt something shift. This wasn't anger anymore. This was war. We responded. Not yelling, not attacking, just the facts. We wrote, "Willow did not lie. She told us exactly what happened. She was told she couldn't sit with her cousins. She was placed on a plastic chair by a trash can. She was told she was not an actual grandchild and called a cheater's kid. When she told us, Patricia denied it. We will not expose her to this again." Kelvin added, "This is why there are 2 Christmas parties this year." We hit send. Willow stayed beside us, gripping my sleeve with small fingers that still shook. For the first few minutes, no one said anything in the chat. The silence was almost worse. The breath before the verdict. Then Maddie's mom. "I saw Patricia take her away. I wondered why." Then Logan's dad. "I saw the chair. That wasn't right." Then Brian. "I saw Willow's face when she walked away. That wasn't a kid who misunderstood." Then Megan. "I heard Mom say something about actual grandchildren at Thanksgiving. I didn't know she actually said it to Willow." And then the flood. "This checks out. I'm so sorry Willow went through this. Not surprised, to be honest. We'll be at your Christmas." Willow read each one like a lifeline. Her breath steadied, her posture lifted. But I still saw the bruise Patricia left on her heart. You don't erase something like that with a few supportive messages. But it helped. It really helped. "Patricia and Victor?" They went radio silent, which was the most guilty-sounding response possible. Christmas came. Our house was full. Genuinely full. Maddie ran up the stairs with Willow squealing behind her. Logan helped Kelvin carry presents like they'd been doing it for decades. My mom and dad hugged Willow like she'd survived a tidal wave. Because she had. I caught her at one point sitting at the kids' table, the real one, not a corner by a trash can, and laughing so hard she snorted. I hadn't heard that sound in weeks. Across town, Patricia and Victor hosted their own Christmas. From what Brian later told us, only one elderly great-aunt, who didn't own a smartphone and never joined the chat, accidentally wandered over there. Patricia had cooked for 30. Only one came. She must have died inside a little. After the last guests left, Kelvin stood in the doorway, arms folded. "I talked to Brian and Megan today," he said. My stomach tightened. "About what?" He hesitated. "The house." I blinked. "What about it?" Kelvin stepped closer. "They want to sell it." Sell. The house his parents lived in. "What?" I whispered. "They don't own it?" "No," Kelvin said. "It was inherited, split between the 3 of us. They only live there because we've let them." I sat down hard. "You mean the only reason they seemed financially stable is because we let them live in a house they don't own," Kelvin finished. "And because I've been helping with their bills for years." My heart hammered. "And now?" "And now," Kelvin said slowly, "we're done letting them take advantage of us. We're selling it. All 3 of us agreed." I covered my mouth. Patricia and Victor. Losing the house? Their pride? Their image? Their security? They had no idea. They thought the worst thing that could happen was missing Christmas. They had no clue the avalanche coming toward them. Kelvin looked at me. "They used us, Daphne," he said softly. "All of us. And they never cared who they hurt along the way." I nodded, throat tight. Willow walked in then, half asleep, rubbing her eyes. "Mom?" she mumbled. I pulled her into my lap. Kelvin watched her, and I saw it again. That resolve, that fury, that promise. He wasn't just cutting off his parents. He was building a wall around our daughter that nothing, not whispers, not smear campaigns, not guilt, would ever get through again. And as I held Willow, warm and drowsy in my arms, I realized Patricia and Victor weren't just losing us. They were losing the life they built on our backs, their reputation, their family, their support, their home. And we were finally free. 6 months later, everything looks different. The house Patricia and Victor lived in, the one they strutted around like royalty, is gone. Sold. Turns out it was worth $540,000. And because it belonged to the kids, not them, the 3 siblings each walked away with exactly $180,000. Patricia and Victor? They walked away with nothing. And here's the kicker. Kelvin wasn't the only one funding their cushy lifestyle. Brian admitted he'd been sending $250 a month. Megan confessed she'd been sending $200 a month. Kelvin, of course, had been sending $350 a month. That's $800 every single month, $9,600 a year, for nearly a decade. Close to $90,000 total. No wonder Patricia and Victor seemed so comfortable. They were literally living off their children. When the siblings realized they'd all been manipulated, all been guilt-tripped into paying, all been lied to, the decision was unanimous. No more money, no more house, no more access. Patricia and Victor had been semi-retired, working part-time, and planning to glide into old age on money they didn't earn. Now they're in a cramped rental, paying real rent for the first time in decades. Their combined part-time income barely covers anything, and their upcoming pension won't either. They went from set for life to barely scraping by. Meanwhile, we're good. Actually, we're better than good. Willow is thriving. No more whispered insults. No more feeling less than. Just love, cousins, real family, and peace. Kelvin and I have a relationship with the rest of the family again. The kind that isn't poisoned by Patricia's drama. And Patricia and Victor? Well, they wanted control. They ended up with nothing. So what do you think? Did we go too far? Or not far enough? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe for more. My parents left my 6-year-old daughter alone at home for a week and went on a luxury holiday with my sister's kids. We didn't have enough space for her in the car, my mother said. I didn't shout. I did this. The next day, their lives started to unravel. I thought it would be another calm week. My daughter, Lucy, thought it would be the best one yet. She was half right. Every year I dropped her off with my parents for Grandma Week, and every year it went fine, until this one. If I'd known what was coming, I'd have kept the engine running. Lucy had been counting down for days. 6 neat X's on her calendar, 1 for each night away. She packed her own backpack, 2 stuffed animals, a flashlight, and exactly 11 crayons. "Grandma says I can draw late," she told me proudly, as if staying up past bedtime were an Olympic sport. I smiled, pretending my chest didn't ache. I'd always been uneasy leaving her there. My parents liked things that looked good from the outside, birthdays, photo ops, grandparent titles, not the actual responsibility that came with them. Jenna's kids always soaked up whatever energy they had left. Still, I convinced myself that a week of grandparents and cousins was good for Lucy, good for her sense of family, even if mine had always felt like an obligation. Their town was only an hour and a half away, but it felt farther, somewhere between memory and exile. By the time I pulled into their driveway, Lucy was vibrating with excitement. "Grandma!" she yelled before I'd even turned off the engine. Mom appeared on the porch, immaculate as ever, one hand shading her eyes. "Well, there's my favorite girl," she said, arms open. She meant Lucy, not me. Jenna's kids, Aiden and Sophie, were already running through the sprinklers shrieking. Travis, my sister's husband, lounged nearby, beer in hand, playing the role of helpful observer. It all looked so normal. Mom kissed Lucy's head. "She's fine with us, Alice." "You look tired. Take the week. Rest." "I always do," I said. I watched Lucy race toward the lawn, her laughter swallowed by the sound of water hitting grass. For once, I let myself believe everything would be okay. My husband and I left the next morning for a short business trip. We run a small design company, and we'd planned the meetings months ago to overlap with Lucy's week away. It was supposed to be easy: work, a few dinners, maybe sleep without alarms. That first evening, I called to check in. Mom answered on speaker. I could hear the cousins in the background. "She's right here," she said, then passed the phone. "Hi, Mommy." "We made cookies," Lucy said, proud and breathless. "Good," I said, smiling. "Be good for Grandma." Everything sounded fine. The next afternoon, no one answered. I tried again after dinner. Still nothing. By the time I saw the photos online, I'd already told myself a dozen harmless explanations: phone charging, bad reception, too busy having fun. Then I saw it. Mom, Dad, Jenna, Travis, the cousins, all of them on a yacht. Caption: family trip. Finally some time together. Family trip. I stared until the screen blurred. Lucy wasn't in any of them. I scrolled again, slower this time, like maybe she'd suddenly appear. Nope. No pigtails, no pink swimsuit, no Lucy. I called Mom. She answered, cheerful. "Hi, honey. How's the trip? Where's Lucy?" "At the house," she said. "At your house?" "Yes, dear. We couldn't bring everyone. There wasn't room in the car." "You left her there?" "Oh, don't sound so horrified." We asked the neighbor to check in. "What neighbor?" "The one with the dog." "They all have dogs, Mom." She sighed, tired of me already. "She's fine, Alice." I hung up. My husband looked up from his laptop. "Everything okay?" "No," I said. "They left her." He frowned, blinking. "Left who?" "Lucy. At their house. Alone." For a second, he didn't understand. Then his mouth opened a little. "Wait. What?" "I called. Mom said there wasn't room in the car." What? There wasn't room?" His voice rose. "You're joking." "I wish I was." He pushed back his chair. "Call someone." "Call anyone. I'm calling Grandma." Grandma answered on the first ring, voice warm. "Sweetheart." "Grandma, they went on vacation." "They left Lucy alone." Silence. Then a stunned, "What? Alone where?" "At their house. They said a neighbor's checking in, but I think that's a lie." "She's 6, Grandma said sharply. "What do you mean they left her?" "I don't know." "Please, can you go there now? You're the only one close enough I could hear the sound of keys already in her hand." "I'm leaving right this minute. Stay on the line if you can." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. 20 minutes crawled by. Then Grandma's voice came back, breathless. "I'm here." I found her relief and nausea hit at once. "Is she okay?" "She's scared. Grandma said. She's been eating crisps and crackers. The lights are all on. She said she didn't want the dark to come back. I pressed my hand over my mouth. Thank you. I'll stay with her until you get here. The next morning, we were on the first flight back. We dropped everything, meetings, clients, deadlines. The business could wait. Lucy couldn't. My husband didn't even argue. He just started packing before I finished the sentence. The flight felt endless. Every minute in the air was another minute too far away. When we finally reached my parents' house, Grandma met us at the door. She's inside. Lucy sat on the couch wearing one of Grandma's sweaters, eyes wide. The moment she saw me, she ran straight into my arms. Mommy. I held her, felt her heartbeat racing against mine. You're safe now. Grandma's voice was steady, colder than I'd ever heard it. They left her a note. Be good. There's food in the fridge. I didn't know what was worse, the note or how normal it sounded, like they were leaving a cat, not a child. The kitchen was a disaster. Crumbs, empty wrappers, sticky juice trails. On the table lay Lucy's drawing pad, a small stick figure inside a house full of yellow scribbles. All the lights still on. Grandma put a hand on my shoulder. You always believed they'd change, she said quietly. Now you know. Lucy cried herself out that night. She stayed curled up on the couch, eyes puffy, voice small. Sometime near morning, she finally fell asleep and whispered, half dreaming, I left the lights on so you'd find me. I sat there for a long time, staring at the crack in the ceiling, the same one from when I was her age. It had widened. Maybe it was always there, and I'd just stopped pretending not to see it. I used to think trust could be repaired. Now I know it only looks that way until the next break. After that week, nothing would ever be the same. The next day, their lives started to unravel. I have one sister, Jenna. She's 2 years older, and she's always been the favorite. She was the star, everyone said so. She danced competitively, the kind with sequins and trophies and judges who smiled too wide. Mom called it her gift. Dad said she had real potential. Everything in our house revolved around that gift. Her practices, her costumes, her nerves. When she twirled, we clapped. When she cried, we rearranged our lives. I didn't dance, I didn't shine. I was the practical one. The one who fetched the water bottle, held the camera, made sure the lights were off before we left for another weekend competition. Mom called me responsible. At the time, I thought it was a compliment. Now I know it was just convenient. When I was 8, they started leaving me home alone. Not overnight, just long enough to forget what company felt like. I'd make a sandwich, do my homework, and pretend the hum of the fridge was someone talking to me. Grandma was the only one who noticed. She lived nearby, and she'd stop by when she knew they'd be gone. She never made a big deal of it, just showed up with dinner and company. She had a way of making an empty house sound full again. Once I told her it made sense that Mom and Dad loved Jenna more. She's special, I said. Grandma looked at me for a long moment before answering. So are you, honey. She's just louder about it. That was Grandma. Soft voice, sharp aim. Jenna's teenage years were the peak of her career. She was in every regional dance final, every glossy recital photo, smiling like her life depended on it. Mine revolved around helping her pack and hearing about her wins after the fact. I used to watch from the crowd when they performed nearby, my parents in the front row, waving roses like she was on Broadway. I'd sit a few rows back, trying to clap in time with the music. Then, one day, it ended. It didn't happen dramatically. There was no injury, no meltdown. She just stopped winning. The girls she used to beat were suddenly better, taller, faster. Jenna took a break. The break stretched into forever. She stayed in her room, scrolling through old photos, eating junk food out of boredom and grief. Mom said, "She's just processing." Dad bought her a treadmill that doubled as a clothes rack within a week. When she stopped dancing, our parents didn't know what to do with themselves. Their entire personalities had been built around her next routine. Without it, the house went quiet. Too quiet. For the first time in years, there was space to talk about something else. They just didn't have anyone to talk to. Then Jenna met Travis. He worked in marketing, which I later learned meant he was unemployed with opinions. He was charming, though, enough for Mom to call him a good influence. They got married a year later, and, because life has a sense of humor, they moved into my parents' house. Just for a while, they said, to save money for a place of their own. That was 8 years ago. They're still saving. The house I grew up in became a shared property, my parents, Jenna, Travis, and eventually their 2 kids. It looked the same from the outside, but inside it was chaos. Half daycare, half retirement home. Mom loved it. "It's so nice having everyone under one roof," she'd say, like she'd built an empire. Dad just nodded, probably because he'd learned long ago that disagreeing was bad for his health. I moved an hour and a half away with my husband and started a small business. We had Lucy, my quiet, curious girl, who loved books and bedtime stories and still believed the world was kind. When Lucy was old enough, I started bringing her over. At first, I stayed for the weekend, just to be sure she was comfortable. She adored her cousins, Aiden and Sophie, wild, loud, always sticky from popsicles. Jenna liked to joke that Lucy was the calm one, which, in Jenna language, meant the boring one. I didn't argue. Being boring beats being reckless. Over time, Cousins Week became a tradition. One week every summer where Lucy stayed with her grandparents and cousins while I worked, or more truthfully, recovered. Lucy counted down the days every year. I counted the ways it could go wrong and told myself it wouldn't. Mom always said, "Go enjoy yourself, Alice. You deserve a break." She said it the same way people say, "Go ahead, we'll keep the cat alive." Looking back, the pattern feels obvious. They'd always taken care of Jenna, her dreams, her mistakes, her family. I'd just never realized how far they were willing to go for her until they crossed the line from careless to cruel. If you'd asked me back then, I'd have said I trusted them. Not because they earned it, but because I wanted to believe they'd learned something over the years. But people don't change. They just get better at pretending. Grandma sat at my parents' kitchen table like she'd just walked through a storm and hadn't decided if she'd survived it. In front of her lay the note my parents left for Lucy. "Be good. There's food in the fridge." Her voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. "I can't believe my daughter wrote that." No one answered. The only sound was the refrigerator humming, the same one that kept the food my mother apparently thought could raise a child. Lucy was asleep on the couch, finally calm after hours of crying. My husband stood by the window, jaw clenched, as if trying not to put his fist through the glass. "I always knew your mother was selfish," Grandma said. "But I didn't think she'd leave her granddaughter alone." "She said the neighbor would check in," I muttered. Grandma's eyebrows rose. "Which neighbor?" I shrugged. "The imaginary one, apparently." That earned a short, bitter laugh. "Well," she said, "imaginary neighbors aren't much help." "You're reporting this, right?" "I will," I said. "Today, Alice." Not eventually. The police station was 10 minutes away. The officer listened, his jaw tightening as I explained. "So she was alone for how long?" he asked. "About half a day," I said. "They left that morning for a week-long trip. They planned to leave her alone the whole time, but I found out and called my grandmother. She got there that evening." He kept writing, slower now. "Unbelievable," he muttered. I handed him the note. "That's what they left behind." He nodded once. We'll start a welfare investigation. When he asked if I wanted to stay anonymous, I shook my head. No, they need to know exactly who called. By the time we left the station, the sun was setting. We went back to the house, packed Lucy's things, and cleaned what we could. Grandma kissed Lucy's forehead before we left. "You're safe now, sweetheart," she said softly. "And I'll always come if you need me." Lucy smiled sleepily. "Promise?" "Promise." We drove home that night. Nobody spoke. Every few miles, my husband's hands would tighten on the wheel, then relax again, like he was still trying to process the fact that we were driving away from people who thought this was normal. A week later, my phone lit up with Mom's name. I answered on speaker so my husband could hear. "Hello? What did you do?" Her voice wasn't confused. It was furious. "I filed a police report," I said, "for child abandonment." "What? What police report?" There was a shuffle, and suddenly Jenna's voice cut through the line. "Don't lie, Alice!" "We're not talking about that." Then came the shouting, both of them at once. "What did you say to Grandma?" "She's lost her mind." "She's giving the house to you." "She's throwing us out. Do you think that's funny?" I blinked. "Wait. What?" "Don't act innocent," Jenna snapped. "Grandma changed the trust. The house is in your name now." "I didn't even know she had a trust." "Sure," Mom said, dripping sarcasm. "You just happened to end up with the house." "How convenient." "She's not confused," I said. "She's angry." "There's a difference." "Angry because you filled her head with lies," Mom shot back. "You've been jealous since you were a kid. Of what, Mom? Your parenting? Or Jenna's trophies?" That hit. I heard her breath catch. Jenna came back louder. "You've destroyed this family." "No," I said. "You did that when you left a 6-year-old alone with a fridge." The line went dead. My hands were shaking when I called Grandma. She answered immediately. "I was expecting this call." "I just got off the phone with them," I said. "They're saying you changed the trust." "I did." "Why?" "Because I've spent 78 years cleaning up other people's messes." This time I wanted to prevent one. I sank into a chair. "They think I made you do it." "I know." "They came by already?" "Yes." I told them to leave. Then I called my lawyer. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said. "They won't try again." "They hate inconvenience more than consequences," I laughed. "They're calling it elder abuse." "That's new." "At least it's creative." "Grandma, why give me the house?" She was quiet for a moment. "Because I can't leave it to someone who thought that roof was fit for a child to be alone under." "It's my decision, Alice. You don't owe me thanks." I took a breath. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "Now promise me one thing. Don't let them near Lucy again." "I promise." "Good," she said. "Then we're done worrying." After we hung up, I sat at the table, phone still in my hand, heart still racing. The police report, the house, the calls. On paper, it looked like justice. In real life, it felt like exhaustion. Maybe families like ours don't break all at once. Maybe they just keep cracking until one day someone notices the floor isn't holding anymore. I thought the shouting was over. I was wrong. For 3 days, everything was quiet. That kind of quiet that feels borrowed, like the pause between thunderclaps when you're not sure if the storm is moving away or just catching its breath. Lucy was back at school. My husband buried himself in work. I tried to go back to normal things, laundry, deadlines, pretending to sleep. But my phone kept lighting up with missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't answer. On the 4th morning, the quiet broke. It started with my cousin from Ohio. "I just wanted to check on you," she said, drawing out the words like she was calling from a soap opera. "Why?" I asked. She hesitated. You haven't seen it? She didn't need to explain. The minute I hung up, the texts started rolling in. Screenshots, links, everyone tagging everyone. Mom had posted a long, trembling paragraph about betrayal and manipulation. Jenna added a shorter one. I'll never understand how someone can destroy their own family for money. Travis, never one to miss attention, commented, #elderabuse. By lunchtime, my name was trending locally, a sentence that should never happen to anyone without a publicist. I called Grandma. She picked up on the second ring, voice brisk. People keep calling me, she said before I could speak. Asking what's going on. Something about computers. I told them I don't do that Facebook nonsense. It's not nonsense, I said. Okay, it is. But they're lying about you. Of course they are, she said, calm as if we were discussing the weather. What are they saying? That I made you give me the house. She snorted. That's creative. I can still think, last I checked. Do you want to see what they're saying? She hesitated. Might as well. I hate when people describe things badly. I drove an hour and a half back to their town, to Grandma's place. The small house she's lived in for more than 30 years. She moved there back when my parents got married, after giving the big house, my childhood home, to my mother through her trust. Write down my passwords, she said as soon as I came in case this kills the computer. It's not going to kill the computer. You don't know that, she said. I set her up at the kitchen table. It smelled like tea and clean air, the way it always did at her place. She leaned close to the screen, squinting. Good Lord! They used my wedding photo. Where did they even get that? Probably from Aunt Carol's endless album of family mistakes. She scrolled. Mom's post, full of sighs and prayer hands. Jenna's essay about family loyalty. Travis, doing his usual lawyer impression in the comments. Grandma's hand trembled once, then steadied. All right, she said. Enough fiction. Let's tell the truth. You don't owe them anything, I said. I owe myself a good night's sleep, she replied. Show me where to type. Her post was short, clean, and sharp. I changed my will and my revocable living trust. I did it because my daughter and her husband left their 6-year-old granddaughter alone in the house I own while they went on vacation. I found the child myself that evening. No one tricked me. I'm not confused. I'm angry, and I'm done. The big house will go to Alice, who remembers what family means. The others can find another roof. She hit post, closed the laptop like she'd just ended a meeting, and said, There. Now they can chew on that. The reaction was instant. Within an hour, her post was everywhere. People I hadn't heard from in a decade were messaging me things like, Your grandma's a legend. Mom deleted her own post. Jenna locked her profile. Travis tried to argue in the comments and got eaten alive by the internet within minutes. Grandma watched it unfold like someone watching a chess game she'd already won. They always forget, she said, that I raised half this town. 2 days later, Jenna showed up at the door with flowers and sunglasses. Grandma didn't open it. She watched through the window until Jenna left the bouquet on the step, then waited another hour before tossing it in the trash. She brought carnations, Grandma told me over the phone. You don't apologize with carnations. That's like saying sorry with a parking ticket. When my husband Lucy and I visited Grandma that weekend, her little house felt like a different world. Peaceful, steady, untouched by the noise in the town. Grandma had baked cookies. Lucy sat on the floor drawing while we drank tea. They've been calling again, Grandma said casually. I let it go to voicemail. What if they show up? I asked. I'll call the police, she said, and maybe the newspaper. They like updates. I laughed. You really don't scare easily, do you? Not anymore. I already outlived their approval. She poured more tea. You know, I used to think silence kept the peace. Turns out it just gives bullies better acoustics. When we left, she walked us to the door. If they show up again, I told her, call me first. She smiled. I'll call whoever gets here faster. Lucy hugged her tightly. You're brave, she said. Grandma winked. Don't tell anyone. It ruins my reputation. That night, back home, I scrolled through Grandma's post one more time. The storm online had mostly passed, but the truth was still sitting there, pinned to the top of her page like a scar that healed on its own terms. One comment stood out. Sometimes the loudest families get quiet when someone finally tells the truth. Maybe that was us. They wanted Grandma's silence. Instead, she gave them the truth. Loud, public, and permanent. 6 months later, everything finally settled. At least on paper. My parents, Jenna and Travis, moved out of the big house after their 30 days were up. They rent now, all together, in a small duplex near the highway. No more yachts or luxury holidays. Rent does that to people. The police investigation ended with a charge of child endangerment. They got probation, a fine, and mandatory parenting classes. No jail, but the report made the local news, and suddenly everyone's favorite family became the town cautionary tale. Child Protective Services also came knocking on Jenna and Travis's door. A routine check, but embarrassing enough that even Mom can't spin it into a victim story. From what I've heard, the house is loud with fighting and quiet with resentment. I don't call. They don't either. Silence has never sounded this peaceful. Lucy and I visit Grandma every week now. The drive isn't bad, an hour and a half of car karaoke and snack crumbs. Grandma pretends to hate the noise, but she always waves from the porch before we're even out of the car. We're planning a short vacation together this spring. Somewhere sunny, somewhere simple. Lucy's already packed 3 books and a bathing suit. Grandma says she'll bring crossword puzzles and sunscreen for the pale ones. Life feels small again, in the best way. Steady, quiet, honest. So what do you think? Did Grandma do the right thing? Did I, by reporting it? Did we go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe for more. My 6-year-old said, Mom, we can't go home tonight. She looked frightened. Then I saw my mother-in-law go inside our house. I didn't panic. I hid and watched. What happened next made me call 911. If you believe every action has a reason, tell me that in the comments, because I spent a long time thinking the people in my story were just stressed, overworked, or making bad choices. And then I watched my mother-in-law unlock my front door with my spare key and set my house on fire like she was lighting a birthday candle. So, maybe not every action needs a deep reason. Some actions just need handcuffs. Whispering Hills looks like a brochure that came to life and learned how to judge you. It's a gated community in Northern Virginia, outside Washington, D.C., the kind of place where the grass is always cut, the mailboxes match, and the HOA sends polite emails that somehow feel like threats. Our street, Magnolia Drive, curved like it was designed to keep strangers confused and residents complacent. 2-story houses, white fences, sprinklers hissing in the morning like secrets. You know the vibe. We're doing well. Please don't ruin the aesthetic. Jason loved it. My husband didn't just want a nice house. He wanted the kind of house that made his coworkers go quiet for half a second when they walked in. He worked in finance, had a title that sounded important, wore suits that didn't wrinkle, and spoke in calm sentences that made people assume he always knew what he was doing. I used to believe that too. Me? I was the one behind the scenes, the quiet manager, the logistics department. I'd been a translator and interpreter before Emily was born. Headset, conference rooms, fast speech, sharper thinking. I loved it. But somewhere between a mortgage, a child, and Jason's career taking off, I became the person who handled everything else so his life could stay smooth. I didn't mind at first. It felt like building something. Then it started feeling like maintaining a lie. That Tuesday morning in October looked like a perfect day to keep pretending. Warm for the season, soft golden light slanting across the kitchen tile. Outside, the maples were halfway turned, red and honey-colored, like nature was trying to be cute. Inside, the coffee maker gurgled and clicked like it was doing important work. Emily padded in wearing her dinosaur socks, hair still a mess from sleep, clutching a small plastic triceratops like it was her emotional support animal. "Mom," she announced, solemn as a judge, "today we have art." "That sounds dangerous," I said, sliding a plate onto the table. "It's not dangerous," she said, offended. "It's creative." "Creativity is how glitter gets into your bloodstream," I told her. "Sit." She giggled and climbed onto her chair, swinging her legs. 6 years old, first grade. Small body, giant opinions. Jason walked in a moment later in an ironed dress shirt and tailored pants, adjusting his cuff like it was a moral obligation. He looked like he belonged in a commercial for success. He leaned down beside Emily and tapped her socked foot. "Race you," he said, and made a show of pulling his own socks on, slowly, dramatically, like an Olympic event. Emily's eyes lit up. She lived for competition, especially when it was fake. They raced, he let her win, she squealed and he ruffled her hair. I watched them and felt that familiar warmth in my chest, the one I used to trust. This is my life, I thought. This is our family. Then Jason's phone buzzed. His head snapped toward it like a dog hearing a whistle. He checked the screen, jaw tightening, and slipped the phone into his pocket like it had teeth. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Work," he said quickly. Of course it was. Everything was always work now. Jason used to be present in our mornings, talkative, teasing. He'd steal my toast and claim it was testing for poison. He'd kiss Emily's forehead and mine like it was part of a routine he actually enjoyed. Lately, he moved through the house like he was already late for something even when he wasn't. Late nights became normal, and not traffic late, not a meeting ran over late. I mean late like he didn't want to come home. He'd walk in after 10, after midnight sometimes, eyes too alert, face too blank. He'd mumble something about deadlines and head straight to the shower, scrubbing like he was trying to erase himself. One night I hugged him and caught a smell on his clothes, sweet and chemical, like cheap air freshener battling smoke. Not a cologne, not a bar, not anything that belonged in our clean, polished house. I asked about it. "Nothing," he said. "Office renovations. It's gross." Then he changed the subject so fast my brain barely had time to keep up. And then he started guarding his phone. I don't mean being private. I mean carrying it to the bathroom and setting it on the sink like it was a newborn. He used to leave it on the counter. Now it might as well have been grafted to his hand. If it buzzed at dinner, his eyes darted to it. If Emily asked him a question, he answered with half a sentence while reading something under the table. The wall between us didn't go up all at once. It rose quietly, brick by brick, text by text, lie by lie. At first I tried to talk. "Are you okay? How's work? Do you want to take a weekend off?" Jason would smile, tight and practiced, and say, "I'm fine." It was the kind of fine that means stop asking. And for a while, I did. Because that's the thing about marriage, you don't want to believe the worst. You want to believe the story you invested in. Then the first call came. Unknown number. I answered because I'm still, at my core, a person who thinks ignoring a phone call might summon bad luck. A man's voice said, rough and flat, "Is this Jason Parker's wife?" My stomach tightened. "Who is this?" I asked. "Tell your husband we're done waiting," he said. "Tell him we remember." Then he hung up. No explanation. No context. Just a line dropped into my kitchen like a sharp object. When I told Jason, he went pale, just for a second, and then forced a laugh that sounded like it hurt. "Scam," he said. "They do that. They pull names off data leaks. Don't answer unknown numbers." I wanted to believe him, so I tried. But the calls didn't stop. They came at night. They came when Emily was doing homework at the table. They came when I was alone in the grocery store aisle, holding a carton of eggs, trying not to look like the kind of woman who could be shaken by a voice on the phone. Sometimes there was heavy breathing. Sometimes there were threats disguised as warnings. Sometimes it was just silence. And then, because the universe has a sense of humor, it went public. There's a group chat for Emily's grade level, parents sharing reminders about Spirit Week and lost jackets and whether Crazy Hair Day is culturally insensitive. It's the digital version of a hallway full of polite smiles. That Wednesday, I was scrolling through messages about a school fundraiser when a new message popped up. No name, no profile photo, just a number. "Parents, be advised Jason Parker is a fraud and a serious debtor. Be careful. He owes over $250,000 and will scam anyone to cover it." I stared at the screen so long my eyes started watering. A minute later, the message disappeared. Deleted, which is hilarious because in group chats people don't forget. They screenshot. The chat went quiet in that slow, sticky way that told me everyone was reading and deciding what kind of person I was. I felt my cheeks burn. My hands trembled. I walked into our living room and watched Emily coloring at the coffee table, humming to herself, completely unaware that her father's name had just been thrown into a pit with 100 witnesses. That evening, when Jason finally came home, I showed him the screenshot. He stared at it, face blank, and then something in him cracked. Not into honesty, but into rage. "They're trying to destroy me," he said. "Do you understand? People want to see you fall when you're successful." "Who is they?" I asked, voice low. Jason's eyes flashed. "Just stay out of it, Megan. You handle the house. You handle Emily. Let me handle my side." I actually laughed. Once. Quiet and ugly. "Your side is showing up in a first-grade parent chat," I said. His jaw clenched. "You're making it worse," he hissed. I went to bed that night with my phone on silent and my heart on loud. Emily wandered into our room around 9, dragging her stuffed stegosaurus and looking sleepy. "Dad," she whispered, "will you read to me?" Jason didn't even open his eyes. "Not tonight," he said. Emily stood there a second, waiting, like she thought maybe he'd remember he was her father. Then she turned and walked back out quietly. I watched her small shape disappear down the hallway and felt something cold settle into my chest. Not fear yet, more like the first warning sign before the smoke. Friday afternoon, I was gathering Emily's backpack and mentally rehearsing my everything is normal smile for school pickup when the doorbell rang. It was Diane. My mother-in-law never visited casually. Diane Parker showed up like a storm with lipstick. Perfect hair, perfect coat, pearls like punctuation. A smile that looked polite until you noticed it didn't move her eyes. She stepped in without waiting for an invitation because boundaries were never her thing. "Megan," she said brightly, like we were friends meeting for brunch. I was nearby. We lived behind a gate with a keypad. Nearby required intention. I offered her coffee because I'm a slow learner. Diane sat in my living room and did what she always did. Turned our marriage into a performance review. Jason is under a lot of pressure, she said, stirring her coffee like she was thinking. Men like him have a lot on their shoulders. Men like him. As if he was a rare, fragile breed. I nodded because disagreeing with Diane was like arguing with a wall that writes emails. And you're supporting him properly? She asked, voice gentle, eyes sharp. There it was. The knife slid in with a smile. I'm doing everything I can, I said. Diane tilted her head. Sometimes men stay out late when home feels tense. Tense. Right. Not because they're hiding something, obviously, because their wives ask questions. How unreasonable. I don't think Jason is staying out because I asked about a threatening phone call, I said, and even I could hear the strain in my voice. Diane's smile tightened. If you push him, you may drive him away. I stared at her for a second, waiting for the moment where she might acknowledge that her son's name had been dragged through a parent chat and someone had basically threatened our family. It didn't come. Diane talked for an hour about Jason's stress, his responsibility, how hard it is to be a man these days. Not once did she ask if I was okay. Not once did she mention Emily. When I finally stood to end the visit, Diane patted my hand like I was a child who didn't understand real life. Just be wise, she said. That's all I'm saying. After she left, I stood in my quiet living room and felt like I'd been shoved, softly, politely, off a ledge. I picked up my phone and opened our bank app. Jason and I had always shared access. We were the we don't keep secrets couple. Or at least I thought we were. The login didn't work. I tried again. Still no. I reset the password. The reset email went to an address I didn't recognize. My stomach sank. Jason had changed the access. Jason had been building a private life inside our shared one. And then my phone rang. It was a woman I'd met once at a company holiday party, Jason's coworker's wife. We'd talked about schools and the weather and pretended corporate events weren't unbearable. Her voice was low and rushed now. Megan, she said. I'm sorry. I shouldn't call, but I'm worried. That word again. Worried. Like my husband was a faulty appliance everyone was noticing. He's been borrowing money, she said. Not from banks, from people. And I overheard something about sports bets. And the kind of people he's involved with aren't normal. My throat tightened. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because if it were my husband, she said, I'd want to know. And because someone just sent a message in a parent's chat, and that's not random. That's spite. She didn't have to say it. Someone wanted Jason humiliated. And when people want you humiliated, it's usually because they want you controlled. That night, when Jason came home, I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just stood in the kitchen while he poured himself water like we were normal, and I asked one simple question. Are you gambling? Jason froze. Just long enough for me to see the truth pass through him. Then he recovered. No, he snapped. Jesus, Megan. Then why are strangers calling me? Why did someone message my child's class parents? Why can't I access our bank account? His eyes went flat. You're snooping now, he said. I'm your wife, I replied. This isn't snooping. This is survival. He set the glass down hard enough to rattle. I said stay out of it, he said, voice low. I stared at him, realizing something slowly and painfully. Jason wasn't just hiding things. He was choosing them over us. I went to bed later with Emily asleep beside me. She'd crawled into my bed because she'd had a weird feeling, and I listened to Jason moving around downstairs long after midnight. At one point, I heard him whisper on the phone, His voice was tense and fast, and then I heard one word that made my skin prickle. Mom. Tuesday morning arrived warm again. Another gentle day pretending nothing was wrong. Outside, Whispering Hills looked like it always did. Tidy lawns, shiny cars, neighbors waving with the same practiced friendliness. Inside our house, the air felt tight, like a room where someone had just argued and left the silence behind. I made breakfast. Emily ate slowly, unusually quiet. Jason barely touched his food. He checked his phone, swore under his breath, checked it again. His knee bounced under the table like he was powering a small generator. "I'll drive today," he said suddenly, grabbing his keys. Normally, I drove. We had a routine. Drop Jason at the metro station, then take Emily to school. But that morning, he insisted. "Why?" I asked. "Meeting," he said. "I can't be late." His tone had that edge again, sharp enough to cut curiosity. So I let him, because at that point, I was still doing the thing where you cooperate with the person who's hurting you, hoping it will keep the peace. Jason drove like someone being chased. He kept checking the clock, the phone, the mirror. Emily sat in the back seat, clutching her small keychain charm, some glittery thing she'd picked at a school fair, and staring out the window like she was trying to solve a problem too big for her. We pulled up at the station. Commuters flowed past us like a tide. Coffee cups, briefcases, tired faces heading into the city. Jason jumped out fast. He didn't kiss me. He didn't look at Emily. "Have a good day," he tossed over his shoulder, already walking away, and then he disappeared into the crowd like he'd never belonged to us. I slid into the driver's seat. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. I started the car, and then Emily spoke. "Mom," she said softly. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were wide, serious. "What is it, Em?" She took a breath, like she was preparing to jump off something. "We can't go home today." I blinked. "What?" "We can't," she repeated, voice shaking slightly. "Please." My heart started pounding, hard and fast. "Emily, why would you say that?" She leaned forward between the seats, and when she spoke again, she lowered her voice like the car might rat her out. "I heard Dad last night." My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. "You were supposed to be asleep," I said automatically, because adults say dumb things when they're scared. "I wasn't," she whispered. I woke up. I heard him in the hallway. He was on the phone. Cold flooded my chest. "What did you hear?" I asked. Emily swallowed. He said, "As soon as I drop them off, do it." My grip tightened on the steering wheel. He said, "Make sure they go to Costco." My mouth went dry. And he said, "Make it look like an electrical thing, like the wiring." I stared ahead through the windshield, suddenly unable to see anything but my own front door. Our house was new. The wiring was new. We'd checked every inspection ourselves. There was no reason for a fire, unless someone made one. I forced air into my lungs. Who was he talking to?" Emily's voice trembled. "Grandma Diane." The world tilted. Diane? The coffee. The advice. The way she'd told me not to push Jason. The way she'd talked about wisdom. My mother-in-law hadn't been worried about Jason's stress. She'd been checking how much I suspected. I didn't argue with Emily. I didn't ask a dozen follow-up questions right away, because I heard something in her voice that wasn't imagination. It was fear. Real, instinctive fear. And children don't invent fear that specific. "Okay," I said, keeping my voice steady with sheer force. "Okay, Em, we're not going home." She let out a shaky breath like she'd been holding it for hours. I drove to a small coffee shop lot a few minutes away and parked. "Stay close to me," I told her. She nodded. No complaining. No questions. Just immediate obedience. We walked back toward our street, quiet, fast, Emily's small hand gripping mine hard enough to hurt. When we reached the corner, we stopped behind a thick old oak that stood near the sidewalk like it had seen too much to be impressed. From there we could see our house, Magnolia Drive, house number 7, our perfect life sitting innocent and neat in the morning sun. We waited. At first nothing happened. I started to wonder if I'd lost my mind, if I was letting stress turn my child's overheard words into a nightmare. And then a silver sedan rolled up and stopped at the curb in front of our house. Diane's car. She got out and looked around, quick and cautious. In her hand was a small handbag. She didn't ring the bell. She didn't knock. She reached into her bag and pulled out a key. My key. The spare I'd given her just in case. She unlocked our front door and walked in like she owned the place. My throat closed. Minutes passed. Then I saw it. An orange flicker in the downstairs window. Not sunlight. Fire. Smoke followed, curling up along the glass like a slow, ugly finger. And then Diane reappeared, moving fast now, not composed anymore. She didn't stroll out like a visitor. She ran. She jumped into her car and sped away like she'd just finished a chore. Emily clung to me, trembling. I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911 so hard my fingers hurt. When the dispatcher answered, my voice came out calm in a way that didn't match how I felt. "There's a fire," I said. "Whispering Hills. Magnolia Drive. House 7. Please, send firefighters and police. Now." "Is anyone inside?" the dispatcher asked. "No," I said, and then my voice cracked. "No, we're not inside." Because my daughter saved us. Sirens arrived fast. Engines, patrol cars, neighbors spilling out of their houses like smoke had called a meeting. People stood on lawns filming like tragedy was entertainment. An officer approached me while firefighters rushed hoses toward my front door. "Ma'am, are you the homeowner?" "Yes." "What happened?" I swallowed, forced my voice steady. "I watched Diane Parker unlock the door with a spare key," I said. "I watched her go in, and then my house started burning. She left right after." The officer's face tightened. He looked toward the house, then back at me. "Okay," he said, and his tone changed, less casual, more sharp. "We need you to come with us and give a formal statement." Emily tugged my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, voice tiny. "Are we okay?" I crouched and pulled her close. "We are," I said. "We are because you listened to that feeling and you told me." She pressed her face into my shoulder, and I felt her small body shaking. Behind us, my living room turned black. At the police station, everything smelled like old coffee and fluorescent lights. They seated me in an interview room that felt designed to make you forget time exists. Detective Reynolds came in with a notebook and tired eyes. He didn't smile. He didn't posture. He looked like a man who'd seen enough human decisions to stop being surprised. "Ms. Parker," he said, "I need you to start from the beginning." So I did. I told him about our perfect life in Whispering Hills and how it had started to crack. Jason coming home late, his phone glued to his hand, the strange, sweet smell on his clothes, the calls, the parent group chat message, Diane's visit and her subtle pressure campaign, the coworker's wife calling, warning me about gambling and borrowing money, and then, this morning, Emily's warning, Diane's key, the fire. Reynolds wrote everything down, occasionally asking a question that landed like a hammer. "When did you last see Diane before today?" "Friday." "What did she say?" "That I shouldn't make home tense," I said, and the bitterness came out sharper than I meant. Reynolds' pen paused. "Did Jason mention insurance lately?" I hesitated, then nodded. He insisted we upgrade our homeowner's policy. He said the mortgage company wanted it. Reynolds looked up at me. Did you verify that? I swallowed. No! Because I'd trusted my husband. Because I'd been living in that warm, comfortable lie where trust feels like safety until it doesn't. A little later, a man in a fire department uniform stepped in, a fire investigator, calm and blunt. He asked about the wiring, the outlets, whether we'd had any electrical issues. No, I said. It's a newer house. Nothing's ever been wrong. He nodded slowly, like he already knew the answer. Then Reynolds's door opened again, and another officer leaned in. We have Diane Parker, he said. Picked her up at her condo. She's refusing to speak, asking for an attorney. Reynolds nodded once. And Jason Parker? He asked. Detained at his office, the officer said. He's not taking it well. Of course he wasn't. Jason didn't do well with consequences. He preferred control. A few minutes later, I saw him in the hallway, hands cuffed, face pale, eyes frantic. When he spotted me, his voice turned desperate. Megan, he shouted. Please, let me explain. I didn't move. I didn't rush to him. I didn't comfort him. Because my house had been on fire. Because my daughter had been shaking in my arms. Because his mother had run from my front door like she'd just finished a job. What did you do? I asked, voice low. Jason's face twisted. I didn't want to hurt you. I swear, you weren't supposed to be there. I felt something inside me go still. You weren't supposed to be there, I repeated. He swallowed hard. You were supposed to go to Costco like you always do. Mom was supposed to check. It was supposed to look like an accident. An accident. He said it like he was talking about a fender bender. Detective Reynolds stepped closer, eyes hard. Jason, you can save it for your attorney. Jason lunged slightly, straining toward me. Megan, I was trying to fix it, he pleaded. I got in too deep. I couldn't get out. They were threatening. Who? I snapped. Jason's mouth opened, then closed. He didn't answer because saying it out loud would make it real. Reynolds led him away. I sat back down and stared at the table, hands shaking. Emily was with a kind neighbor who'd agreed to watch her for a bit, because I couldn't drag my 6-year-old through a police station all day. She was safe. She had snacks. She had someone calm. And I had the sudden, crushing realization that my child had overheard my husband planning her possible death. Whether Jason meant to kill us or not didn't matter. He built a plan where our lives were collateral. That's not love. That's arithmetic. The truth came out in pieces, ugly, sharp pieces that didn't fit together until they did. Jason had been gambling for about a year. It started small, sports bets, a few hundred here and there, enough to feel exciting, not enough to raise alarms. Then he lost. And instead of stopping, he chased it. Because gamblers don't think in logic. They think in almost. Almost won. Almost recovered. Almost fixed. Jason had taken out personal loans and then borrowed from people who didn't file paperwork. He'd used payday lenders. He'd asked friends. He'd asked co-workers. He'd asked anyone who still believed his polished suit meant stability. And when he ran out of respectable options, he found unrespectable ones. That was when the calls started. That was when someone decided humiliating him in a parent chat was a fun way to tighten the leash. Detective Reynolds told me later they traced the anonymous message to a burner number, prepaid phone, purchased in cash, activated and discarded. Not an official collector, just someone making sure Jason felt watched. Diane, at first, had tried to help. She'd sold jewelry, drained savings, covered what she could. But the debt had grown too big, even for a woman who treated her son like the center of the universe. So they came up with a solution. Arson. Insurance. A clean reset. Jason's alibi was the commute. Drop us at the station. Be seen. Be gone. Diane would use the key, start the fire, and leave. I was supposed to take Emily shopping after dropping him off, because I often did. Groceries, supplies, whatever. A routine predictable enough to build a crime around. The plan was detailed. The safety was not. There was no real guarantee Emily and I wouldn't come back early. No precautions. No second check. Just a vague call and confirm that apparently didn't happen because my daughter spoke up and broke their script. Reynolds told me the prosecutors weren't amused. When you deliberately set a house on fire, one that could reasonably contain people, you don't get to hide behind "they weren't supposed to be there." In court, Jason's attorney tried to paint him as desperate. Diane's attorney tried to paint her as manipulated by maternal love. The judge looked unimpressed by both excuses. Jason took a plea deal. 8 years. Insurance fraud. Arson. And charges tied to the risk he created, because "I didn't mean to" doesn't erase what could have happened. Diane got 5. Less than Jason, but still enough to remove her from the role of family puppet master for a good long while. I didn't attend every hearing. I didn't need to. I'd already watched her run from my burning house. I'd already seen my husband's face when he said, "You weren't supposed to be there." That was all the closure I required. The insurance part took longer. Of course it did. Insurance companies don't cut checks because you cried nicely. They investigated. They questioned. They sent adjusters. They went through the ashes like archaeologists looking for lies. For a while, everything was frozen. Then, after the criminal case moved forward and the facts were established, the mortgage company got paid first, because lenders always get their cut before grief does. And then I received what I could as the innocent spouse on the policy, enough to rebuild something smaller, safer, and far away from Whispering Hills. I used most of it to clean up the mess Jason left behind. Not because I loved him, not because I felt responsible for his addiction, because I wanted Emily to sleep without phone calls in the night, because I wanted our future to be quiet. You'd be amazed how much peace costs. We moved into a small apartment a few towns away. Nothing glamorous, nothing curated. No gate, no matching mailboxes, no HOA sending passive-aggressive emails about lawn height. Just an ordinary place with ordinary noises and walls that didn't hide a second life. It wasn't the house Jason had wanted, which was the point. I filed for divorce and took my maiden name back. The paperwork felt sterile. Lines and signatures and legal language that couldn't capture what it feels like to realize your marriage was built on secrecy. But when it was done, I breathed easier. I went back to work too. Remote translation and interpreting projects, the kind of jobs that reminded me I still had a brain and a backbone. The money wasn't flashy, but every paycheck felt clean. Emily started a new school. She didn't talk much about the fire. Kids do that. They absorb trauma quietly and then surprise you years later with a single sentence that knocks the air out of you. But sometimes, when she thought I wasn't watching, she'd glance at the front door like she was checking it. Some habits don't fade fast. One afternoon, months after the move, she came home and dropped her backpack by the door with a sigh that sounded way too adult for a child. "Mom," she said, brightening suddenly, "I made a friend." "That's good," I said, setting down the mail. "What's his name?" "Ethan," she announced, like it was important. Of course it was. At 6, then 7, once the year turned, friendship is a miracle you want to report immediately. I smiled and brushed her hair back from her face. "Is he nice?" I asked. Emily nodded hard. "He shares his snacks." "That's basically love," I told her. She giggled, and for a moment, the world felt normal again. Not perfect, not curated, but real. Later that night, Emily crawled into bed and hugged her stuffed stegosaurus tight. "Mom?" she asked sleepily. "Yeah? Are we safe now?" I paused, because I don't like lying to my child, but I also don't like handing her fear wrapped as honesty. We're safer, I said finally. Because we listen. Because we don't ignore the weird feelings. Because we don't pretend everything is fine when it isn't. Emily's eyes drifted closed. Okay, she whispered. And as I watched her breathing even out, I felt that old warmth in my chest again. Not from a perfect house, not from a husband in a suit. From this. From the fact that my 6-year-old daughter heard danger in the dark and spoke up anyway. From the fact that I listened. So if you're wondering what I learned from all of it, it's simple. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't that people can lie to you, it's how long you can live next to a lie and call it home. Tell me, if you were in my place, would you have trusted your child and stayed away? Or would you have gone home like it was any other morning? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.